Hi, my name is Bethany, and today I wanted to talk to you about theory of mind and how it relates to autism. Theory of mind is basically the ability to understand that other people have different perspectives. This could be different knowledge, motivation, or thoughts, etc. than your own. This typically starts developing around age 4. Psychologists use a test called a false belief test to see if children are developing theory of mind. An example of a false belief test is the Sally-Ann test. So basically you have Sally and you have Ann. Sally has a basket, Ann has a box. Now Sally has a marble as well, so Sally puts her marble in her basket. Then she leaves the room with Ann still in the room. So Ann, now alone, picks up the marble from the basket and hides it in her box. Then our lovely Sally is going to come back into the room. The idea here is to ask the children where they think Sally will look first. Someone who understands theory of mind will know that Sally still thinks that it's in her basket because that's the information she still has. Children who don't understand theory of mind will have the knowledge that the marble is actually in the box and expect Sally to look in the box first. The ability to understand that people have different beliefs about the world, whether false, different thoughts and motivations, etc., are all a part of having theory of mind. So basically, it's the ability to have your own perspective and thoughts, beliefs, etc., but understand that other people have their own and their different sets of all of that jazz. Now this plays into social situations because once you understand what kind of beliefs or perspective that someone else has, you have a better understanding of what they're most likely thinking and therefore an ability to know what to do, say, etc. next in that situation. However, autistics tend to have a less developed theory of mind. This happens in varying degrees. For example, I would have no problem being able to pass the Sally-Ann test. However, when I was younger, I did have trouble writing stories that were interesting and dynamic because I had difficulty with the concept that different characters had different knowledge about different things going on in the story. According to Very Well Mind, one study shows that children typically progress through 5 different stages of theory of mind and those abilities, and in a particular order. Number 1 is the understanding that the reasons why people might want something, i.e. desires, may differ from one person to the next. Number 2 is the understanding that people can have different beliefs about the same thing or situation. Number 3, the understanding that people may not comprehend or have the knowledge that something is true. Number 4, the understanding that people can hold false beliefs about the world. And number 5, the understanding that people can have hidden emotions or that they may act one way while feeling another way. They've also found that theory of mind can be unstable. That is, a person might be able to understand a state of mind in one situation but struggle in the next. I found that for myself, I often take an almost like student-like take on theory of mind, if that makes sense. For example, in real-time processing, I do have difficulty understanding other people's perspectives and viewpoints and the idea that someone thinks differently than me. So I completely and utterly assume that people think the same way I do, are motivated by the same things I am in the moment. However, if I take a step back and can look at a situation in a theoretical sense, I usually do better. I sometimes just have to remind myself that people are different from me and they do different things based on how they see the world. It may not make actual sense to me, but I have to try to make that concession for people because it is not my first response or go-to in a situation. However, in my desire to understand people more and be able to connect more, I do work very hard to at least make an understanding that people are allowed to think differently than me, and that's mostly due to the kind of beliefs and the kind of life they've lived, the information that has been presented to them, and their different perspective. However, I'm not exactly good at using that information to predict what they're going to do. I think I still very much struggle with the 5th stage because for me, it just doesn't make sense that someone would do something that doesn't match with how they feel, if that makes sense. Again, I can usually grasp it theoretically in the aftermath, but as it's happening, it's almost sometimes terrifying because I cannot match what I'm seeing with reality, and it's very, very confusing. Makes the situation way crazy sometimes. It's also difficult for me to process the idea that people are actually successful at pretending to be happy when they're not. For example, I know a lot of people will like try to put a smile on, but it's like really fake and you can tell they're sad. Like, I get that. Like, oh, they're just trying to be happy, but they're actually sad and bothered. However, when people are actually successful at looking happy, it's hard for me to grasp the concept that they're not. I also think this is why sarcasm can be so confusing and, for me, quite frankly, terrifying when someone's really good at pulling it off. This is a major ordeal for us as autistics because it affects our social competency. When we don't really understand the state of mind of other people, it becomes difficult for us to understand their perspective or understand why they did something or what they're about to do, etc., and what to do in social situations with specific people. There are also theories that executive functioning affects theory of mind and actually that they might affect each other in some way. A lot of autistics tend to kind of stick to their guns when it comes to something and have difficulty showing that empathy, and it might simply be because we lack the theory of mind to understand why on earth you would think the way that you're thinking. To be fair, I think a lot of people actually struggle with theory of mind. Now, I say that because if you notice, some people get very divisive about people not thinking exactly the same way they do. So I think that there are plenty of people who are not on the spectrum who also struggle with theory of mind. However, it is a sort of understanding that comes a lot more naturally to those who are not autistic, and it helps them in their friendships and socializing and stuff like that. I have noticed that other people tend to like go out of their way to be considerate and think of people from like the other person's perspective and what they might be thinking or going through, and I don't actively think like that. I usually only step into that when there's been a conflict. So what are your thoughts on theory of mind? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and leave a thumbs up. And just a friendly reminder, because I've forgotten about it the last gajillion other times, I do have a Patreon, so if you're interested in supporting me monetarily, feel free to check it out. You guys are amazing. Those of you who are already my patrons, you're awesome. Thank you so much for being here, everybody, and I hope that you're having a wonderful week. If you haven't already, I upload videos every Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time to the best of my ability. So be sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy autism content. See me in my next video. Bye!